Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, Mr. Abagnale, how close to reality was the movie?
I didn't have a lot to do with the movie. I obviously would have preferred not to have a movie made about my life. As you know, I raised my 3 sons in Oklahoma to keep them away from just that, even though I officed here in D.C. and commuted back and forth, saw you on the plane all the time with your lovely wife. However, I thought that he did a very good job of telling the story. As he said many times, he loved the redemption side of the story. He had owned the rights for more than 20 years. He bought the rights back when he was making the movie with the shark, Jaws. And when Barbara Walters asked him why he waited so long to make the movie, he said, I waited to see what Frank Abagnale did with his life before I immortalized him on film. And so in the end, I think he was very much into the redemption side of the story, and I was probably very fortunate that it was he who told the story.
Yeah, well, thank you. You know, back in your scamming days, you were, if there's any truth to the story, you were always one step ahead. You knew where to go if the old technology wasn't working, you'd try something else. As you apply that background to what's out there now, you mentioned in your opening statement that there are things that it shifts around for a while. The technology will be working on maybe the grandparents. And what do you see in the future now as a prospect for scamming in the future that is not there now?
Well, you know, up until present day, cybercrime, for example, is all about money and getting information. I'm very concerned that cybercrime in the next few years is going to turn very black. So we have the ability now to shut someone's pacemaker off, but we have to be within 35 feet of that individual to shut that pacemaker off or speed it up. We have the ability to get within 35 feet of an automobile, shut off the car, turn on the airbags, lock the person in the vehicle. Again, we need to be within 35 feet. I believe that within the next 5 years, you'll be able to do that from 5,000 miles away. So I'm very concerned about our infrastructure. I'm very concerned about our electrical grid. These are the things that I think eventually cybercrime will come to be more of a terrorist tool and more of as a tool to eliminate individuals, and that's when it will get very, very scary.
Yeah, that is scary. It happens the one sitting to your right is an old friend of mine from the house, and the two of us know more about grandkids than anybody else probably in this room. And he forgot to introduce his wife, so I'll introduce her. Fran, hold your hand up. All right, Mr. Schwanke, I was fascinated. First of all, that was the worst wildfire in history of Oklahoma and Kansas. And I got in my little plane last week and went up to Woodward. And then yesterday, I was in Buffalo, Oklahoma. And we had over 300 farmers and ranchers. Half of them were from Kansas. And I not one time in those meetings did it come up that anyone was scammed. And you mentioned that scamming was something that was fairly common. Explain how it worked. I need this to take back to...
What they were doing was they were calling these victims and calling that area with those victims in it, offering federal grant money. So you would apply.
No, pause right there. How would they expect money to be wired to them? Because procedurally, how would that work?
I don't know how they were going to get the money, and I don't think that we had anyone fall for it in that area because it was reported.
Oh.
But they were asking for that money. You would had to have paid. You would had to have paid an application fee in order to receive this free federal grant money for rebuilding after the fires.
Yeah, that's really because that's such a cruel thing. I mean, Mr. Abagnale, they were telling stories about how they're watching their livestock burn alive during this thing. It was really a tragedy, and that hasn't come up as an issue in the meetings that we had. So I'll maybe talk to you afterwards, and I want to visit with them out there because I'm sure if it was happening, that it was taking place.
Well, and I want to give a lot of credit. That's an example where local law enforcement stepped out so quickly on it. In these scams, you can't wait on something like that a week or 2 weeks. They stepped out that day, called a news conference, and talked about it. So they were able to get that information out quickly, both through the news, but also the incredible tool that we have in social media, and it passed around very quickly.
Yeah. General DeWine, I remember so well recently, and you would have no way of knowing this, but OG&E, that's in Oklahoma, Oklahoma Gas and Electric, they had their representatives that made phone calls to customers and get them to make payments to the scammers. Is this something that has happened other places where utilities and this type of a group out there would be involved in scamming?
You know, Senator, I don't have any specific recollection that we had one of those cases. You know, most of these cases come down to some representation to you that you're going to get something. You, the consumer, are going to get something. And it's usually, as we tell people, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is not true. But they all kind of follow that. And you're going to get something, and to get something, you know, we'll send you a check, but you have to send us a check type thing. And, you know, it could be the attorney's fees or the cost of handling or something.
Yeah, well, that's, maybe it's just particular concern in Oklahoma, but it did lead off into a lot of scams that were taking place just through that company. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.